Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to Single Parent Reset, the podcast that helps you navigate the ups and downs of single parenthood and find the balance that you deserve. Whether you're a single parent, co-parent or solo parent, this is the show for you. I'm Orla and I'm a life coach for single parents and a single parent myself. I know how hard it can be, but I believe every single parent has the strength to create a life that they are proud of. For more information about me and the work that I do, please visit my website solascoaching.com. That is SOLAS coaching.com. In each episode of this podcast, we'll be shining a light on the unique struggles single parents face and cover the aspects of being a single parent that are often overlooked and left unspoken. I'll be sharing actionable steps to help you overcome these challenges and find more calm and fulfillment in your life. Single Parent Reset is your weekly opportunity to gain a fresh perspective, take back control, and feel more in charge of your journey. Do you ever have one of those books that when you're reading it, you cannot stop talking about it and telling people about it? And then after you've read it, you still want everyone you know to have read it? That happened to me very recently with the book Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. I love this book so much so that I've done something that I've never done before. I went on Instagram, I found the author and I DM'd her, and to my absolute surprise, she replied. And then I asked her, would she be interested in coming on Single Parent Reset? And to my delight, she said yes. So today you are going to listen to a conversation with me and Roisin O'Donnell, the author of Nesting, as she talks all about the book and we talk all about single parenthood as well. I really enjoyed the conversation and I really hope you do too. Welcome, Roisin, to Single Parent Research. Thank you so much for coming along today. I am so excited about today's episodes.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is great.
Great. Well, before we get started and diving into the book and hearing all about the book, I want to know a little bit about you. So if you want to introduce the listeners a little bit about you, and yeah, that would be great if you could do that.
Sure. So my family are from Derry originally. My mum and dad are from Derry City, and they left before I was born and went and lived in England. So I grew up in Sheffield, but it was very much that feeling of Derry was always home. You know, we always went home for the summer holidays to Derry, and all my aunties and uncles and cousins and everyone are there. And then when I was 18, then I moved over to Dublin to start to study at Trinity College, and my family moved over as well. Around about the same time, my dad got a job in Dublin, and I suppose like a lot of Irish people living abroad, they'd always wanted to kind of move home, and so they moved over. So it was funny. It was like I went to college, and my family kind of came too, and they settled in Navan, which is where I'm living now. So about an hour north of Dublin. And I live with my two little girls. They're 6 and 8, so very busy. And until recently, I was working full-time as a primary school teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And writing as well. I've always been writing. Sure, we'll get into that. I've been, really wanting to be a writer since I was very young. And my first book, Nesting, was published in January this year. And at the moment, I'm on a career break, which is lovely. So it's my first time being like a full-time writer. Although I don't know, when you're a single parent, I don't know if you get to really be a full-time anything. I'm, writer / mom / taxi / everything else in between, But yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. So I love how you're having this career break. Well, I'm not going to say career break. You're obviously promoting the book and doing everything for the book. I'd love to know actually, before we start talking about the book, is what even spurred you on to even do this? Because you've mentioned you're a single parent yourself. And I know so many single parents feel like everything needs to be put on hold until the kids are at school or when they finish school, and then life can start again. Or then that's when I'll, go after my dreams and my goals. And, your kids are 6 and 8. What spurred you on to follow your dream and actually start writing this book?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I have been writing since I was very young, even since I was a little, yeah, very, very young, even at primary school. I just loved stories. I loved books. I was trying to write little stories of my own. And all through my teenage years, I just always wanted to write. And when, I studied English at college, and I didn't do a huge amount then, sort of in my 20s. I think I kind of lost a bit of confidence, but I started writing short stories then. So, like,
Mhm.
before I had the children, I would have published a lot of short stories. And I published a short story collection in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, 2016. Sorry, 2016. I published a short story collection. And then I found out I was pregnant with my first child like the day after the launch. So it was funny. It was, obviously life changed very,
Yeah.
very fast then. And I didn't write for a number of years. But I just found that it's my creative outlet. I don't feel really like myself when I'm not writing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few years there where I didn't write very much at all. In 2018, I published like one short story. That was it the whole year. I just wrote one short story. Like, very luckily, that ended up winning an Irish Book Award for Short Story of the Year,
Good
which
one
was
then.
like completely mad because it was the
Mhm.
only thing I'd had a chance to write that year. And then, yeah, a number of years, 2019, don't think I wrote a single word really, because I
Mhm.
had two children at that stage, two under two. And it's just so busy. But then I got a commission. I got a phone call in 2020. It was sort of in the middle of lockdown. I actually thought it was a hoax to start off with. This woman left me a voicemail, and I thought, no, that can't be real. She said, "Oh, I'm phoning from RT Radio 1, and I've come across a couple of your short stories, and I'd like to commission you to write a story for radio." And I thought, oh my, like, nothing like that had ever happened to me before. I couldn't believe it. So I phoned her back and spoke to her about it. And she said, "You can write anything you want, but it has to be on the theme of independence." Yeah, it was around, so it was 2020, 2021. So it was around the centenary of Irish independence.
Right.
And they
Okay.
were really asking writers to think about, what does Irish independence mean, 100 years later? Like, what have we done really with our independence? And for me, I just knew straight away what I wanted to write. And it was a story about a single mom called Kira, and she's living in emergency accommodation in the Hotel Eden with her
Mm-hmm.
two children, Ella and Sophie. And
Mm-hmm.
she's left, a relationship with a very controlling partner. And the short story was just one day in her life, really, living in the
Yeah.
emergency accommodation. How does she get through just a day with small children in a hotel room, the highs and lows?
Mm-hmm.
And I finished writing the short story, and it was broadcast for radio then. Siobhan McSweeney from Derry Girls, Sister Michael, she read the
Brilliant.
story for radio, and she
Yeah.
was brilliant. But even as I was listening to her reading it on RT Radio 1 that night, I just remember thinking, it's not really finished. Like, I wanted to know what would happen next for Kira.
Yeah.
Would she find a home for her children?
Mm-hmm.
Would she manage to completely break away from this abusive partner? What would happen next? And at that point, as you said, with little kids, on my own with them, it wasn't an ideal time to write a novel. But it was nearly like the story wouldn't let me go.
Yeah.
So I just felt, look, I have to try to do this somehow. And I think maybe there was nearly a little bit of rebellion in me as well, because why should single parents have to put their dreams on hold, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And why, why not? I think, when you land on a story that just feels like it needs to be told, I suppose I just felt, well, why not? Why not try to do this?
Oh, yeah, I love that. I like the rebellion aspect. And also what I really enjoy is you were given the theme of independence. And you went down the route of that story, because a lot of people would think all independence has been taken away if you're in that situation whereby you're in temporary accommodation, you've left your partner, you've got your 2 young kids, you don't know the path ahead of you. But actually, it is the most independent and empowering thing someone can do who is in that situation, is to leave that relationship and make it a track forward, and to shine the positive light on that, and how it's a really positive thing that Kira did do. I love that. I love how you took that theme, and you could have ran loads of different ways, or you could have gone with the stereotype of, I'm an independent single parent, look at me and all these things I can do, and all the badge of honors of me marshalling myself and overcompensating because I'm a single parent to doing all the things. But actually you went to the other route of, this is actually what independence can look like at the start of the beginning of some people's single parent journey. And I think that's brilliant.
Definitely. Oh, thank you. And I think really the place where Kira has lost her independence was within the marriage, within the relationship, because she's very much lost her sense of self, because her husband Ryan, his voice, his criticism of her has very much dominated her thinking. So for a lot of it for me was to do with Kira's internal journey. And that's where, I'm glad that you find it kind of hopeful and everything else. That's what I really wanted, was to show her really almost coming back to life and being able to tune into her own intuition, her own thoughts, her own, because at the start of the book, her self-talk, the way that we sort of talk to ourselves internally, is all very negative. She's been put down by him so much that she doesn't really know how to actually think clearly for herself and decide what steps to take. But as the book progresses, that's, you can see her really, really coming back to herself. And that was really a really important aspect of the independence for me, I think, was exploring that in a way that I didn't feel had really been done.
Yeah. No, brilliant. I think it's been done so well, and like you said, it's the evolution of her reclaiming her own inner narrative. I think it's done so well. And then, for someone who hasn't read the book at all, I just want to do a quick my take on it. So I have I have a WhatsApp group with some friends where we. It's called Not Book Club, because there was another book club that our other friends set up that we weren't involved in. So we're like, well, we're going to have our own one and we're going to call it Not Book Club. And the premise of our book club is, what we do is it's purely for talking about books. So all of us read books and we'll just put our reviews of the books in there. So then we can get ideas of what other people are reading. Like, oh, that sounds good. Oh, I'll read that one as well. And it's been running for years now, and we get so much joy and connection from it, because, and again, it's purely about books. We don't talk about anything else in this WhatsApp group. But I'm gonna get it up. So the previous book I had read before nesting, I had said it was a really good book, and I'd said it's the type of book where I now feel sorry for my next book because it has big shoes to fill. And then I come into the WhatsApp group later and I say, after I'd read Nesting, okay, my next book, it did not disappoint. It was absolutely brilliant. It was about a woman with young kids in an emotionally abusive relationship trying to leave her husband. It was so good because it made it really clear how it can happen to anyone. And if it does, the actual realities they face in terms of logistics, temporary accommodation, etc. Also, it was set in Dublin, so it had way too many ticks for me. So that was my review of the book. And honestly, it was just, when you read a really good book, you're like, oh God, the next one, that'll be good. And then honestly, I read Nesting. This is brilliant. Actually, if you just want to do a very brief overview of the book.
Yeah, I suppose when I talk about Nesting, I tend to describe it as a story about a woman called Kira Fay, who from the outside seems to have this perfect life. She's living in the leafy suburbs of Dublin with her husband Ryan and her 2 little children, Ella and Sophie, and everything from the outside would look fine, but behind closed doors she's living a life where she's completely controlled. Her whole world is controlled by Ryan. He's controlling the finances. He's cut her off from work, from her friends, from her beloved family who are over the sea in England. And she's tried to leave before, and she's ended up being manipulated back. And she really one day just reaches breaking point. She's found out that she's pregnant again. That happens quite early in the book, so I'm not giving any spoilers there. And she just I think she really just feels that she can't go through another one of those pregnancies because
Mhm.
things, as they tend to, were so much worse when she was pregnant. And she just reaches this breaking point and decides that she's going to take the two children, get in the car, and drive away and somehow find a way to build a better life for them.
Mhm.
And the next thing is really the story of what happens next, the journey that she is on, and the quest, I suppose, for a better future, for
Mhm.
housing, for safety, for security. Ryan, of course, won't let her go that easily. He's
Mhm.
constantly trying to manipulate her back. But in contrast to his voice, we start getting the voices of the people that Kira meets along the way, and this
Mhm.
idea of, I suppose, found family, and the community that she ends up building. And really nesting is, I think from looking at the back of the book or whatever, people might think, oh God, it sounds really depressing. But to me, nesting is actually a very hopeful journey, and hopefully very, authentic story, really, just about this woman's life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you mentioned there the idea that all these like new connections that she makes, and I love some of the characters that she meets, particularly the other single parents who just sweep in immediately and who are a bit further down the line in terms of their single parent situation or journey, and they just know how to help her and what to say. And I think that's so true for many single parents. The connection gets
Yeah,
very quick and immediate because it's just you get the essence of what the other person is going through and you know
definitely.
what to say.
Yeah, when you get talking to other single parents and that, it's like, not always, because just because you're in the same situation as someone doesn't mean that you actually have anything in common, but
Mhm.
often I found that you can kind of click on a different level, and there's just that instant understanding. I've met a couple of lovely friends I have now through the Frollo app,
Mhm.
and through getting to know them, and you have these chats where they understand really what it's like, and I think it's really important to have that.
Mhm.
And in the book, yeah, Kira meets a woman who's living in the hotel room next to her, Kathy, who's she's was good fun to write. She's very direct and
Mhm.
sort of straight talking, and
Mhm.
I suppose really challenges Kira's thinking and in a lot of ways. And her children are that bit older, and then she introduces Kira to a friend of hers, Alex,
Mhm.
who has also left a relationship with an abusive partner and is on
Mhm.
her own journey. And the conversation that the women have, I think, is really, yeah, really sort of crucial to
Mhm.
Kira's journey.
Yeah, actually, I forgot about that character. That's a really good one that's in there as well, Alex's story. Because yeah, it's another kind of track the way things can go, and you kind of have that in there. And then one thing which I mentioned in my book club review, my WhatsApp group, is this idea, which I think you painted so well. I think people assume for people who are living in temporary accommodation or who get into Kira's situation that they're from a certain socioeconomic background, or, there's certain things that have happened to lead them to get there. But what you've painted so well is how it can happen to anyone. And if it does happen to you, the actual reality is if you don't have the support system around you, because Kira's family are in Sheffield in the story, if you don't have a support system around you, what you are actually faced with, not just emotionally, the emotional side you've done so well, but also the logistical side of like, who are these people actually who are using these services and why are they using them? And I think you've done such a good service of just painting it out as it's not just, oh, those people over there. It can happen to anyone. I think that was came like it jumped off the page to me that, which was done so well.
Yeah. Oh no, I wanted to show that because there's so much, I think, shame and
Mhm.
stigma associated with I suppose with homelessness, with domestic violence. And
Mhm.
I wanted to break through that, because
Mhm.
so often in novels there's this sort of idea that it's somehow the woman's fault,
Mhm.
that there's something maybe wrong with her, that she has somehow caused this to happen, that she's put herself in this situation. And I really just wanted to break through that, and it felt quite, I don't know, sort of radical at the time.
Mhm.
There's one point where Kira ends up talking to a therapist, not until much later, really, in the novel, because there's huge psychological barriers to actually reaching out for support in the first
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
But she does end up talking to someone, and one of the things that the therapist says to her is that, look, these women are targeted actually for their strengths, not for their weaknesses. And women in Kira's position who are survivors of, coercive control and everything else, they're actually incredibly strong, incredibly kind, incredibly brave. And it's for these very qualities that they've sort of been targeted, and that's it's absolutely no fault of their own. But it's something that Kira, I think, does struggle with throughout the novel, is just this feeling that she's to blame, and the feeling of all the shame that goes with that. And unfortunately, with the housing crisis that we're experiencing, and that there can be just this lack of support, and it's definitely makes things more difficult. Although, I mean, I suppose, to put a more positive light on it, the book is set in 2018. And even since then, there have been improvements. Things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
We have, even with the establishment of Cuan, the national strategy for, the prevention of domestic violence. And they are making progress. And for example, some of the hoops that Kira has to jump through to try to get herself on the housing list, there is now a system where women leaving abusive partners can access the housing assistance payment automatically without having to go through quite as much red tape. Now, I'm not saying like it's still difficult, but there is progress being made. I think there is starting to be more recognition that this is an area we really need to look at. In fact, Women's Aid just published a new paper last week, which is specifically about post-separation abuse, to do with the family courts in particular. We are starting to realize that is an area where there needs to be massive change, really, because women don't feel that the support network really is there when, they've been through enough already, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's great you've highlighted that there is positive things happening. And I think for a lot of people, they don't even know where to start looking when it comes to getting this support, or even it's just the admission, I'm in this position, to themselves. So like, this is like, even Googling those words or those things can be really challenging. And so what I will do for people who are listening, I will put in the show notes different places that you can go to if you aren't anyway in a situation like Kira found herself in as well, because and know that it's okay to use these sources, or these resources. They're there for people to help people, and you'll be met with
absolutely. And it's really hard, making that first phone call. I think it's very, very hard. But just, I suppose, for people to know that just making contact doesn't mean that you're automatically going to make a big change. There's pressure. Sometimes it's just the power of telling your own story to someone who understands and will listen. And I think for Kira, that's a big thing, is learning to listen to her own story, not the story that Ryan is telling, but to actually believe in her own story. And I think this is where the support services are absolutely brilliant, is just making that phone call and talking to someone. And it can be a series of phone calls. It can be, a process that goes on over a long time. So there's no pressure there. But it's just, the power, I think, of voicing something and putting into words what you are experiencing. And also, the support services, they're also there for family and friends. I think people maybe sometimes don't realize this, but if you have someone in your life who you're worried about, whether it's a sister, a friend, whoever it is, it's okay for you to phone a helpline and just say, I wonder how I could best support my loved one. Because they're there for you too. And I think something I wanted to show in Nesting is the impact as well on the wider family. Kira has her mom and her sister Sinead, who was another great character to write. And I know it's very frustrating for them, really seeing what Kira's going through and sometimes not knowing how best to help. And I know in some cases Sinead ends up causing more of a hindrance than a help, but you can hopefully understand where she's coming from and how she would reach that point of frustration.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you write really well about, from both sides, the extended family, and how, it doesn't just happen in the nuclear family, the ripple effect it can have on the extended family, how everyone can react completely differently, and how it lands on them. And then I'm wondering, for the book, how much research did you have to do in terms of getting into the mind of Kira, and what, the reality she was facing? What sort of type of research did you have to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, a certain amount of the research, I suppose, was quite informal in that I
Hmm.
just was very aware of these
Yeah.
stories. I just think you are particularly, existing in the world as a woman and,
Yeah.
just going about your life and listening to the news and talking to friends and, particularly when you're a single parent and have a lot of single parent friends, you don't have to go too far, I think, really
Hmm.
to become very aware that this is something that is being experienced by an
Yeah.
awful lot of people. But within that, I did do a huge amount of research in terms of talking to people, I met with a support worker from a refuge who was really great at talking to me about, I suppose, the patterns that they're
Hmm.
seeing in terms of coercive control, in terms of I suppose, a lot of the violence that's non-physical violence, but the emotional violence and manipulation, and I suppose use of finances, use of technology to monitor and to control. And really gave me an insight into that, which I was then able to, I suppose, weave into the story. I just wanted it to feel really authentic to Kira's experience. And then the whole aspect of living in a hotel. I mean, I've never, had to live in a hotel. Luckily I have, family support,
Yes.
but I just wanted to know really what that would be like, because I think we get so numb to, we see the statistics all the time about the rising numbers of families in emergency
Yeah.
accommodation, but I suppose to really think about, well, what is that actually like? What is it like to try to, I don't know, potty train a 2-year-old in a
Yeah.
hotel bedroom? Like, how do you even do that?
Yeah.
And I spoke to a number of people. I spoke to a professor who's a sociologist at the University of London and has spent years specifically researching the impact of emergency accommodation on families. And
Right.
she talked to me about things like, having to use a different hotel entrance,
Yeah.
the lack of cooking facilities, just all the, I suppose, the restrictions placed on these families' lives. And, I was just interested in this idea that how, when we go to stay in a hotel, we see it as like a break from reality, and quite
Yeah.
often you'll see, advertisements, take a break from your everyday life.
Hmm.
But actually, for families living in emergency accommodation, this break is more like a rupture. It's very disruptive
Hmm.
to everyday life. So you have situations like when one of the children is sick and has to go and ends up spending an overnight in Temple Street.
Yeah.
Kira then is really worried that they're going to lose their place in the hotel because they haven't signed in at the right time. And
Yeah.
it's just an unimaginable level of stress, I think, to be under. And I suppose I wanted to really show the reality of that.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you're right about the details, like you said, using the separate staircase to go into the building, and yeah, the cooking facilities. And another thing that you write about really well, which and this is when I was reading this part, I was like, she has to be a single parent herself because she's writing about this too well. It's the fact, and I think a lot of other things when it comes to single parents seems to forget this aspect. Anywhere she went, the kids had to go. And or
Yeah.
they had to be thought of, and you never forgot about the kids. They were always there. They were always written about, and and because I was always thinking, but what about the kids? Oh, they're there. You were talking about it, like just little things about like making sure they get back to the hotel. Then she'd be like, oh, let's go down and get them all food, and she'd have to bring them all down to get the food. And
Yeah.
I think
The
it's that
logistics.
the logistics of being a single parent
Mhm.
sometimes that people don't realize that at
Oh,
every
yeah.
single step of the way, you need to either find a support group that can help you, or you need to be able to, or, like you are in control of those kids at all times. And to do
Yeah.
those, especially with young kids, with the buggy and things like that, I thought yeah, you
No,
did that really well.
it's the level of organization, really, isn't it? And the
Hmm.
practical things and the logistics. I think, yeah, single parents don't always get enough credit for, the incredible job that they're doing. Even things like, I don't know, say it's late at night and you realize that you've run out of milk, so you don't have milk to make the cereal in the morning. Well, what are you going to do? Because
Yeah.
you can't just nip out to the shop.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I think that people don't maybe really think of. There's no nipping out to the shop. If they're in bed, you can't leave them. There's no nipping out for a jog or whatever. And I suppose I wanted to show that, to also show, I suppose, a bit of the humor in it as well. Like, there's one point where they're out. This is very shortly after they've left, and it's quite late. It's got dark, and the little 4-year-old Sophie just can't believe this. She's like, "Mommy, it's like we're in outer space." And Kira has this moment where she actually realized, hang on a minute, when was I actually out of the house at night time? And she realized it was a very long time ago. It's like such a novelty for all of them. And I wanted to really show, I suppose, like the clash between worlds, because with little kids, even though obviously this is causing a lot of stress and a lot of difficulty for Kira, I think the little kids actually kind of save her in a way as well, and really kind of uplift her. And because there's times when, like, Kira could be going through the horrendous stress with Ryan. Like, there's one part where Ryan is just messing her around with the court. He's not shown up for a court appearance. He's issuing her all sorts of threats. And she goes to pick up the kids from play school. The parents will relate to this now. They come out and say, "Look what we've got, Mammy." And it's the bear. You know, this thing where they bring the bear home from play school, and you have to give that bear the time of its life. And you have to take photos of everything the bear did that weekend, and then bring the bear back and all this. And sure, this is just the worst moment for this to happen. But I mean, Kira can't do anything. She just has to roll with it. Okay, right? Let's take the bear to the park, And it's I suppose that kind of clash between the two different worlds is something that I really wanted to show, because it is, I mean, being a single parent is stressful, it's difficult, but there's also incredible joy there. I know with my two, like the bond that we have and the fun and the games that goes on, it's, it is really precious and really special. And I wanted to show that as well.
Yeah, no, and I think you've done that, like, because I always think sometimes as a single parent, that especially in the early days, the hardest thing about it is coming to terms with the fact you are a single parent and having to do everything that comes with being a single parent, all the parenting by yourself and everything. But then there's no way you could have the strength to do it if you didn't have the child, because they bring you all that love. So it's this real, like, two, like you said, the two different worlds kind of colliding. It's like they give you the strength to do it, but the reason it's so hard is because you need to be the parent to best. So it's kind of like going round in circles with that. And I think, that you've described it really well there. And then for you as a parent, you are a single parent yourself. So I'm wondering, what was your writing process like? Because I highly doubt you were sitting at a lovely table, with your coffee and not being interrupted at any point. So how did you find the time to do this, to write the book?
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I look back at nesting, I think, actually, how did I? It seems like it's always existed nearly. It's hard to imagine. But no, looking back, I was working full time as a primary teacher. And the two girls, they were even younger then. But I used to just find time throughout the day, and it was like little short segments of time, really, to start off with. So I might have maybe set my alarm and got up half an hour earlier than them, and just done that maybe half an hour in the morning. For some reason, that always seems to be really, really effective. I try to do that even now, even on a career break. I do try to get up that little bit before them and to start my day with writing. There's something about starting my day with that creative time that I'll then come back to later. And I would have then, maybe at different points during the day, just found a little bit of time, maybe while I was cooking dinner, the dinner was cooking, and maybe find a little 20 minutes there to write something. I used to do quite a bit on my phone, actually, on the Google Docs on the phone, because I could be doing that on the go. And then after they'd gone to bed at night, it was easier when they were younger, because they would have been in bed, I suppose, earlier. And after they'd gone to sleep, I would maybe do an hour then on working on the novel. And just chipping away at it, really, over the years. It took a long time, and I definitely abandoned it at several moments and just thought, no, what are you doing? I think one of the things was I'd walk into Easton's or whatever and look at the books that were there, and I just think, like, there's no books about a single mom living in a hotel room. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no one is going to want to read this. What are you doing? And I just, sometimes I wouldn't write anything for maybe a month or two. Something always brought me back to the story. I just wanted to know what would happen to Kira, how things were going to work out, and it just somehow kind of gave me the strength to keep going with it. So,
Amazing.
but I mean, for any single parents that are listening, I suppose if you have, something, if you want to write, if you want to pursue something creative, I would say if you can find a way to fit in a little bit every day is nearly, I think, more effective than a big chunk, rather than trying to just say do one chunk of writing for like 4 hours on a Saturday. Sometimes that can be hard. I think if you're just keeping on top of it by doing just that little kind of half an hour every day, it keeps you in the world of the story, and keeps you going, I think. And it's, I don't know, it's, as I said, I just don't feel like myself if I'm not writing. I definitely feel that I'm, yeah, just my more authentic self, and I think probably a better mom, and just probably a better person to be around when I'm writing. And I think that's the piece to remember, really, isn't it? Is that I suppose you can look at it as nearly a type of self-care. And it is that part of putting on your own oxygen mask first, right? And to kind of
Absolutely.
model that for our children as well,
Yeah.
And it's been great, I think, for my girls to see, to see nesting. And I didn't think they'd be really that interested.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure. But just after the book was launched here in Ireland, my local bookshop wanted me just to come in and sign some copies. And it was a Saturday. And as you say, if you're going somewhere, the kids have to come too.
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
said, girls, just come with me. We just have to pop into Eason's just for 10 minutes just to sign these books. And they came with me. And their reaction was so cute.
Oh,
Saw my book in Eason's,
yeah.
the little one's like, Mammy, that's your book. And we went over then, and they were helping me to open the book onto the right page for signing. And
Yeah.
no, they were proud as punch. They
Oh,
were really just like,
amazing.
you'd think they'd written it.
Yeah.
Everyone calls it nexting.
Oh,
Nexting.
I love that.
And
That's, yeah.
it was great. And I just didn't, I saw that and maybe really thought about what it would mean for them. But I think as a single parent, it is really lovely to kind of model that for them, to show like, look, you can follow your dreams too.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I just love the idea of you going in with them and then seeing it. I think that's just so nice. And for them to see the results of what you probably at the time, maybe you were trying to do bits saying, oh, I'm trying to write the book, or they would have heard conversations about you talking about it, see the results.
Yeah, it
And
makes it more real for them. Yeah.
yeah, and I like how you said for you writing is like a form of self-care. And I love because a lot of the time people think self-care is like, going for like long big yoga classes or massages.
Yeah.
But what I always try to say
Yeah.
to people, self-care is anything that just brings you some sense of relaxation or outlet. And like you said, it doesn't need to be, you need to block out a massive chunk of time, because let's face it, single parents, we don't have those massive chunks of time. So trying to find bits of being able to do that, whatever it is that is your self-care, doing it every day at some point in the day. And I also do the same thing. I get up before my son and have about an hour before he's up, because if I don't do that, just the day's written off. I'm not a good mom. Like, I just need that time to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, do I want to
It's
get
really
up when the
important.
alarm goes off? No, I don't. But I know that it will make me a better person if I do that.
Yeah.
I'm a better parent to my son. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. And it's okay to acknowledge that. And yeah, definitely. I think it's just really, really important to allow yourself that time,
Yeah.
and to try to find little ways to kind of build it into your day. And I think as well, for me, it was nearly like letting go with the idea of what a writer looks like, what
Yeah.
being a writer looks like, that it doesn't have to be sitting around at your beautiful desk with a lovely view and your, I don't know, sort of quill pen, and that actually it's okay to be cooking the dinner and writing a scene on the phone. And
Yeah.
you know what? Sometimes I think there is actually like a certain quality that comes from writing that's sort of like at the coal face, as it were, that like the texture of your life sort of feeds into the work. And like that can only be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And the book in itself has been received so well. It's been sitting in the top charts, I know, in Ireland for quite a while, which is, I'm sure,
Yeah.
amazing for you to see. In terms of how it's been received, has there been any responses that have surprised you or have been unexpected? From your point of view, what has the response been?
No, I mean it's been incredible. I've just been just so grateful to have the book read by so many people and to have just had such lovely things said about the book. And it's interesting. I think that really the reader completes the picture in a way with the book. You sort of see it in a different way when you start to get the feedback from readers, and it's interesting in that way. I suppose a lot of people just saying about how tense nesting feels, and I wasn't really aware of that at the time of writing. I just wanted it to feel authentic and to feel real, and it's very character driven. And I suppose the tension really comes from that. And I suppose I don't know, maybe been a little bit surprised that so much of the conversation has been around coercive control and what that looks like. And a lot of the, I suppose, like reviews of nesting have basically been like kind of essays about coercive control. But
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. It's great to get conversation started about this topic because it's so important. And I suppose I didn't maybe realize at the time of writing that it would be don't know. Yeah, so I don't know, not like shocking isn't the right word, but that would be the aspect of the book that was picked up on the most. And I suppose people have said like about it being, I mean, a couple of like reviewers have said that it's quite radical, that it turns the idea of a domestic novel kind of inside out, which I hadn't really thought of it like that before, but I thought that was maybe like a good way of putting it. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting, getting all the different reactions for sure, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it has been. And yeah, I think for me, like it's the main takeaway for me is the story of the single parent thread threaded. I've never heard a single parent story written so well. I think that was the main thing for
Yeah,
me. But I can definitely
that's good.
see
Yeah.
I can see why the coercive control element has been really picked up as well, because I guess it's not written about the way you've written about it.
I
I think that,
suppose, yeah.
yeah,
I maybe wasn't aware of that, just that it hadn't been really done that much before.
or it's been always written in a way, in a real extremist way, whereas you've written in
Yeah,
like a
it so
quieter,
often
smaller
is.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so often as well in books, it's this, you maybe see someone, getting into a relationship
Yeah.
and then it all starts to go wrong. And then, the end of the book tends to be the woman sort of driving off into the sunset.
Hmm.
Whereas I wanted to show that really that moment of leaving can really be just the start of the journey. I think it is, for most single parents, it's like that's where the journey kind of begins. It's not where it ends. So
Yeah.
that's really what I wanted to explore.
Yeah, definitely. And as for the tension, I mean, anyone who hasn't read the book, you will be hooked by the first chapter is like you're like, what is going on here? Like I think that it's done so well. And it does, I think it eases up, but like you really hook people in at the very start and then it kind of weaves throughout it. And I'm gonna ask you now, for any single parents out there who are just feeling like they're going through the mundanity of, single parenthood and they're putting everyone else, their kids first, job first, everything else and they just think that, life will happen when their kids are grown up. What advice would you have for them to start doing something for themselves now?
Well, I think it's really important to think about yourself and think about self-care,
Yeah.
and that it's okay, firstly, just to allow yourself that. I suppose maybe thinking about the interests that you had possibly before the children came along, or maybe that you've had on the back burner, and is there a way to reignite that interest again, and looking at the things that make you feel like yourself,
Mhm.
and how could you maybe somehow build that into your week, and looking at I suppose sometimes when you're starting off with something you maybe have to be quite deliberate about it rather than thinking, oh, it'll just happen. So even that little deliberate thing about setting the alarm clock half an hour early,
Yeah.
looking at your weekly calendar neatly and thinking, right, where within my week, where can I actually make some time for my interests? And
Mhm.
I think another thing though is trying to connect maybe with a group of people that have a similar interest to you, and that you can really kind of encourage each other. Like, I have a writing group who I met through an online course years ago, just when I was very early at the stages of writing nesting. And they're all over the world. They're in, America and Australia and England, but we have like a little WhatsApp group that we keep in touch. And just kind of, we just sort of spur each other on, with the writing process. And we share recommendations of books. And just knowing that you have someone in your life who's kind of on the same wavelength, I
Yeah.
think that can be really kind of invigorating and empowering. So if you're able to find something like that, I think is a really good step.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good tip, and it works really well. Now that everything's so digital, the single parents, like,
Yeah.
time is of the essence. Or you mentioned, in the evenings we are stuck inside while the kids are in bed. So finding an online group or whatever it may be your passion is, and,
Yeah.
just starting to contribute to that, and yeah, and igniting your passion that way can be the first step that you can take.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then my final question for you is, what advice would you have for someone who is it currently in Kira's situation, or let's say a few days before Kira's situation, who is absolutely terrified at the thought of having to leave a situation or a relationship that they know isn't right for them?
Yeah. Well, I think, as we were saying, contacting a helpline and talking to someone who really, has experience and is able to give you some practical advice, I think is probably one of the best things that you can really do.
Mhm.
Just to give someone for you to listen to you, and for you to express your story and voice your experiences. And I think, I mean, I'm a writer, so I suppose I would say that, but I do think writing things down
Yeah.
and trying to get some sort of sense of clarity is probably, one of the most powerful things you can do. I think the most, difficult thing really for Kira at the start is that she's so confused. She
Yeah.
nearly doesn't know what is the best path to take. It's very hard because obviously, Ryan, he's not nasty all the time. He can, switch like a light switch and be all, charming and lovely. So
Mhm.
she's just feeling so confused about what is the best path to take. But I think nearly when you start writing down a story and seeing what you have actually experienced and putting it into words, it can really help to clarify what is the best path for you. And everyone's different. Everyone's going to have a different journey.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Well, it has been just amazing to speak to you about not just the book, but also about just single parenthood. It's my favorite topic to talk about, and I know the listeners also
Oh,
love to
no,
listen
it's
about
lovely to
it.
get a chance to talk about it. Thank you so much.
Amazing. And so the book is Nesting, and you can find it in all major bookshops. And like I said, if you haven't read it, go out and read it now. It's absolutely brilliant. And is there any parting words that you want to say to the listeners, Roisin?
Oh, no, just I suppose any single parents listening, just I know you should be very proud of yourself, and like, you've got this and you're doing an amazing job. And I think only single parents realize just, the challenges that we face, but also the joy of that connection with your kids, and just to, believe in yourself.
Oh, God, I took that straight to me. So I'm like, that's going to keep me going for the day. What a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much. I mean, even down to the parting words there, she was just brilliant. Thank you so much, Roisin, again, for coming on the podcast. In next week's episode, we're going to be talking all about making things just a little bit easier for ourselves as single parents. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Single Parent Reset. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, please go to my website, solacecoaching.com, for further details. And don't forget to follow my Instagram page at Solace Coaching for more insightful content on living a life to be proud of as a single parent. As always, if you find this episode useful, please share with your friends and family. Remember, many single parents may seem like they have it all together, but this could be exactly what they need to help them move forward today.